So imagine this. Your doctor makes a mistake, a really serious one. But legally, what happens if that mistake didn't guarantee a bad outcome, but just took away your chance at a good one? That's the really complex and honestly heart-wrenching question we're diving into.
I mean, it seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? If a doctor's mistake lowers your odds of making it, you'd think there should be some kind of justice for that. But, as you'll see, in the eyes of the law, the answer is anything but simple.
And this very question, this exact dilemma, was put to the test in a huge landmark case called Gregg versus Scott. This is a story that forced the highest court in the UK to really wrestle with some heavy stuff: statistics, probability, and what justice even means when it comes to medicine.
To really get our heads around the legal puzzle here, we've got to start with the human story at the center of it all. This is about a man, Mr. Gregg, and a fateful diagnosis that would go on to change not just his life, but maybe the law itself.
Okay, so the whole story really hinges on this 9-month window. It all kicks off in November 1994. Mr. Gregg goes to his doctor, Dr. Scott, because he's found a lump under his arm. He gets told don't worry about it, it's benign, just some fatty tissue. But, for 9 long months, the lump is still there. He keeps raising concerns, but they're dismissed. Finally, he goes and gets a second opinion. And that specialist gives him the news that changes everything. It was cancer the whole time, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And worse, in those 9 months of delay, the cancer had spread.
So, yeah, a clear mistake was made, no doubt about it. But in a courtroom, you have to prove exactly what that mistake cost you. And for Mr. Gregg, the loss wasn't something physical you could point to. It was a number. It was a probability. You could call it a statistical injury. And this is the number that the entire case is built around: 17%. Medical experts figured out that when Mr. Gregg first saw Dr. Scott, his chance of surviving another 10 years was about 42%. Not great, but it was a chance. Because of that 9-month delay, his chance absolutely plummeted all the way down to just 25%. That lost 17%, that became the entire basis for his fight for justice.
And this brings us right to the heart of the legal fight. See, Mr. Gregg wasn't just suing over the cancer itself. He was suing for the lost opportunity to fight it when his chances were better. He was basically asking the courts to do something new, to recognize that the loss of a chance is a real injury.
Now, you have to understand, this is a pretty radical idea for the law. The whole argument isn't just that the doctor's mistake might have caused a worse result later on. No, it's that the doctor's mistake took something valuable away from him right then and there. It stole a statistical chance for a better future. And that stolen chance, that 17%, they argued, should be something you can get compensated for.
And this is where the two sides just completely collided. On one side, you've got Mr. Gregg's lawyers saying, look, the doctor's negligence robbed him of a real 17% chance of survival. That lost chance is the injury. But the defense came back with a classic, powerful legal argument. They said, you can't prove our negligence caused the outcome because I'm sorry to say, he already had less than a 50% chance of surviving to begin with.
Well, this battle went all the way to the top, to the House of Lords, which was the UK's Supreme Court at the time. And their decision was going to be a huge deal for medical law. And it all came down to this very strict, old-school legal rule.
And that rule is called the balance of probabilities. Basically, in a civil case like this, not a criminal one, you don't have to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt. You just have to show it was more likely than not. And what does that mean? It means you have to show there was a greater than 50% probability. That 50% line, it's literally everything in this case. And because of that rule, Mr. Gregg's claim was denied. The court's logic was cold and mathematical. Since his chance of survival was only 42% to start with, it was already, statistically speaking, more likely that he would die than survive. So he could never prove that the doctor's mistake was the thing that, more likely than not, caused the tragic outcome. He just couldn't get over that 50% line.
But here's the kicker. This was not some easy, unanimous decision. The court was deeply, deeply divided. It was a 3-2 split. You had 3 of the top judges in the country sticking to that traditional all-or-nothing rule. But 2 of them fought back hard, arguing that the law has to be more flexible, that it has to recognize that losing a substantial chance at life is a real tangible harm.
And this quote just perfectly captures the argument from the judges who disagreed. They basically said the 50% cutoff is totally arbitrary. It creates this crazy situation where a patient who starts with a 55% chance gets full compensation if a doctor messes up, but a patient with a 45% chance gets absolutely nothing for the exact same mistake. They called it, and I quote, frankly irrational. So,
Even though Mr. Gregg lost his case, its ghost still haunts the worlds of medicine and law. The questions it raised didn't go away. In fact, they're probably more important today than ever before.
So what's the big takeaway here? Well, the crucial point is that this case locked in a really tough, rigid standard in the UK. It makes it almost impossible for patients who already have a poor prognosis, less than 50%, to win a case, even if a doctor's mistake makes things much worse. Now, on one hand, you could say this protects doctors from lawsuits where the patient was likely to have a bad outcome no matter what. But on the flip side, it creates what a lot of people call a justice gap, leaving patients whose slim chances were wiped out by a clear mistake with nothing.
And that leaves us with the big, uncomfortable question that this case forces us to face. The law loves certainty. It wants a clear, provable link between A and B. But our gut, our sense of fairness, tells us that losing any chance at life, no matter how small, is a huge loss. And so we have to ask ourselves, when a mistake is made, where should we draw that line?